My name is Benton Stokes. I'm a former fundamentalist, post-evangelical worship leader, and songwriter. I enjoy wry Manhattans, roller coasters, and road trips, just not all at the same time.
I'm Elane O'Rourke, and I'm a teacher, an author, and a spiritual coach. I was a philosophy professor and a liberal pastor in a couple of former lives, and these days I love aha moments and not-so-dry martinis.
We have conversations about life and God with a queer perspective, over cocktails, like you. This is Cocktail Theology. Today we are enjoying white Negronis.
But are we?
Well, I'm about to. I haven't yet.
Okay. I'm a little concerned because I don't think you stuck to my invented recipe.
No, I probably didn't.
All right.
No,
all right. So what did you do?
I turned to liquor.com.
Oh my God!
I know. This is 3 parts Tanqueray Gin, 2 parts Lillet Blanc, 1 part Luxardo Bitter Bianco, which is a spirit you found.
Okay, it's tasty. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Mm-hmm.
But I still take a tiny bit of pride in never having heard of a white Negroni and coming up with a white Negroni.
Oh yeah, the one that you made me initially was superb.
Okay, all right, you've won your life back. It's all good. We can continue on with the conversation. This is actually really nice. I like the Lillet Blanc. It adds just a whole different character to it.
It really does. It's kind of fruity in an interesting way.
Ooh, you know what would work is Hendrix. Or like one of the Hendrix florals.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Totally bring it out. That would be just a whole different drink.
That's a really good idea.
With a new name.
Yes.
Garden
yes.
variety.
With the garden variety.
That's the best I can do.
It was great. On short notice, that was really good.
Usually my cocktails are called Yet Another Unnamed Cocktail 1B.
Right, 3C.
Yeah, exactly. No,
yeah.
I like this.
So earlier in the season, we did the Negroni, which is a classic 3-ingredient gin cocktail.
Mm-hmm.
The white Negroni is a variation that has come along recently. And it's very tasty, and it actually is clear like a martini.
Yes.
And it tastes really good.
This would be really good with a little bit of orange peel.
It would. It actually would
Garnish.
be very good with that.
Okay, we'll have to try that again.
So I ran across a piece from the Mind and Soul Foundation. They are a British organization. It looks like that leans kind of Anglican in their directors. 2 of their directors are Anglican priests.
Okay.
But they also have lay people who are psychologists, psychiatrists. And this is an organization that's been around, for best I can tell, at least 12 years.
Okay. And did you tell me that one of the 2 Anglican priests at the top of this, one's a female and one's a male? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I was looking for conversations that are happening in the church around mental health.
Oh, yeah.
And this is sort of a part 2 to an episode that we recorded a couple months ago.
Right.
And I felt like it was something that we could spend some more time with. This is from the Mind and Soul Foundation's website. It says, while things are becoming so much better, classic stigma in the church is giving way to an informed hybrid. This is a narrative that has moved on from calling mental health issues simply sin, disobedience, or demonic attack.
Good.
But still leave mental health sufferers feeling wounded.
Okay.
So there are 6 conversations that they wanted to highlight that they are finding in talking with people who are coming to them for counsel that are happening in the church.
I notice that the conversations and the stigma and all of that are coming from the Anglican tradition. And we tend to focus our concern with evangelical traditions.
It's true.
I just feel the need to lift up that there is a stigma about mental health that is pervasive.
It is pervasive.
Period. It's not just church. It's in general. Like if you say that you have mental health problems, people immediately go to, you need to be watched. Right? So just kind of raising up.
No, thank you for saying that, because you're right. A lot of what we have been pointing out this season has been things that we see symptomatic in evangelical churches. But this is not a phenomenon that's unique to evangelical churches at all.
Not even a little.
This is an issue in churches everywhere of all stripes.
And outside of churches.
And outside of churches too.
Yeah.
So the first conversation is around trusting God.
Okay.
what the church might say is something like, if you trust God more, or as you trust God more, the anxiety or the depression that you're suffering with will gradually ease.
Okay. All right.
But the problem is, if you are depressed or if you are anxious, what you're really going to hear from that is more that, first of all, I have a lack of trust in God. And secondly, if I just trust God more, all this will get easier.
Right. Right. So even if there's some amount of truth in that if you have trust, period, anxiety lessens, period, becomes in the person who's suffering, becomes this is all on your problem with blah, 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 blah. Whether that's true or not.
Right.
It's not a useful thing. Okay. So what are you thinking about that?
I don't think it's a helpful answer from the church. There are people who have deep faith and still struggle in these ways.
Of course. Of course.
Having a deep faith does not immunize you from feeling depressed or sad or anxious or angry or any of those things.
Yep.
We are still humans, and we still have those issues, and we deal with those things. And mental health issues don't go away simply because you strive to have a deeper faith, whether that means building other faith practices into your life or just praying more or whatever. Now, I'm not saying those things can't help.
Right.
But if you have clinical depression, chances are what you need is maybe medication, maybe therapy. There are other ways to combat those things.
Yep.
And definitely talking to someone is important.
Yep.
But faith on its own, that's not necessarily a helpful answer, because whoever is suffering this way simply hears, I'm just not faithful enough.
Right. May I speak to that?
Yeah.
So I have not always suffered from, but have had clinical depression and depression-related anxiety forever. My mother had it and was never diagnosed, never treated. And so I know that some of my experience of the world comes from my dealing with someone who didn't deal with these things. Right. So I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
Most of the time. I completely and I feel really confident about this. I completely and totally trust that God is on my side. God loves me. God knows me better than anybody. All of those things. And I caught myself at work being incredibly anxious today. And behaving in ways that I notice when I see them are about anxiety. And I can look back over the last week or so and say, there have been a number of behaviors, and these aren't huge things. These are like picking my nails or having too much sugar. You know what I mean? Things that are kind of not a big deal, sort of, except that they are signals to me that this other thing's going on. And I may be only one person, but it seems to me that automatically breaks that paradigm. The reality is, with medication, with therapy, and all those things, I'm much better off than, say, my mom was.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that has solved, or that my faith in God has solved whatever that thing is. There's more going on chemically, biologically, and all of those things than one little simple answer can solve.
Absolutely. So to dither it down to you just need to trust God more is just a little oversimplistic.
Oh, by far, because it's not about trusting God when you're talking about something that is biochemical or that is part of your environmental experience that has shaped you. I'm thinking about PTSD.
Right.
It's not about trusting God. That is a good first step, is learning and really working at God is trustworthy as opposed to all of these other people.
Yes.
But that doesn't solve the problem.
Right.
The problem is a much richer problem than that, because we are much richer people. We're more complex than that.
Definitely.
So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Okay, a second conversation, they're calling the self-indulgent conversation. And the idea is that if we are self-indulgent, meaning we indulge our pain or we give undue consideration to our own depression or pain or anxiety or whatever, that it is inhibiting us from doing the ministry that God has called us to do.
Ooh.
Okay.
Ooh. I'm sorry. It goes from self-indulgence to I'm not doing enough.
Kinda, yeah.
Wow.
So really, it's like they point out Job or Elijah and say they were depressed, and yet they didn't pander to their depression, although I think you could argue that maybe they did.
I think Job absolutely did. So Elijah ran off and hid in a cave. Which is kind of what I do whenever I get depressed, is I'm like,
Sure.
Oh, F no, get away, I'm in my cave. And then Job went off and he was like crawling and asking his friend, that sounds like pandering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it definitely is not the same as ignoring, like keeping at arm's length your depression and your anxiety, as if anybody could do that.
Right.
But basically they're saying, they got on with the ministry God had called them to.
Oh my God.
So what the sufferer hears is, I need to ignore my pain and get on to what God is calling me to do.
Okay, so you just described my 30s. Thank you. So, but here's the part that gets me about that. It's not about whether that's true or not. The part that gets me is the absolute lack of biblical foundation for that. Like, that just offends me on kind of a deep, forget it, you can say anything you want about me, but don't screw up my Bible. It's that. It's like, that's just wrong. That's actually not what happens.
No, not at all.
Wow.
Not at all. Okay.
I'm not sure I want to hear the other four.
There are more.
Okay.
The personal cross conversation. From the church, they might say something like, we all have our cross to bear. The good news is that in heaven, there will be no more weeping or gnashing of teeth. Okay, so obviously what the sufferer hears is, well, I'm never getting better until I die, and life is hopeless.
So why not bring on death?
Exactly. Right.
Okay. Kierkegaard, let's move it aside, really handled that well. I don't even know where to start with that one. I mean, I truly don't know. It's so patently absurd that I'm having a little trouble with it. Like, for me, it's a little bit like going to the circus and watching somebody eat fire. It's like, okay, cool.
Love that for you.
Love that for you. And also, I understand how you did that. I get it. So help me understand how this is. Help me with this one.
What I have heard is about the thorn in the flesh that the Apostle Paul wrote about. That Paul admitted to having a thorn in his flesh, and he never said what the thorn was.
Sure,
but I find it akin.
I think it was because he was gay.
Well, a lot of people do conjecture that.
Okay, I'm totally just making stuff up.
But I find this akin to that.
Okay.
So Jesus had a cross. Paul had a thorn. You have anxiety and depression. And so you're supposed to carry your anxiety and depression the same way that Jesus suffered. You're supposed to suffer, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not helpful in any way.
So this is about the pick up your cross thing.
Yeah.
If we're going to point to Jesus and his cross was about reconnecting humankind with God, and, depending upon your theology, suffering on behalf of everyone. Mm-hmm. One's own suffering cannot be destroyed on a cross in the same way. Our crosses to bear are about our relationship with God and other people, rather than something that is necessarily inherent in us that needs care and management. Like Jesus's cross, you could have given all the care and management you wanted. That's not what it's about. So my cross to bear is more about, how do I live like Jesus did so that I can be a small semblance of the kind of person Jesus was? That is very different than, here's my point of suffering. A little bit like my ex-mother-in-law. And so that's my, I mean, right. It's such a minimalization of what Jesus did on the cross.
Absolutely it is.
That I find it hard to even answer that, because it so degrades what happened on the cross.
It does. And at the same time, it minimizes
Well, exactly.
anyone's suffering.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, these are fun. Okay, so here's another one. The undermining the mission conversation. So the idea there is if we spend so much time looking at ourselves and turning our attention inward, and they mean as individuals, but also as a church, then we are not living up to the mission of reaching out. Like we're not answering the gospel call to evangelize or to reach out because we're spending so much time inwardly. And so what the sufferer hears is, I'm to blame because somebody didn't meet Jesus, because I'm not able to reach out. I'm not able to reach beyond my own anxiety or depression.
I'm sorry.
It's so ridiculous.
We may need a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. I think God is far more creative than this gives credit to. The truth is, if I am not doing my quota of 80 parking tickets in a day, and God actually wants to save people, which I believe God does, whatever save means, God will figure it out.
I tend to think so too.
So if God says, you know, you only wrote 79 parking tickets today, Lane, that 80th person is going to go to hell, I feel confident that our God is loving enough and creative enough to say, wow, Elane needed a personal day. You know, who can step in? Great. Okay. So that's just staying within the theology.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stepping outside the theology, that is not what Scripture says.
Not at all.
Making disciples is about forming human beings.
Yes, it is.
And if you look at all of the context around that, the way that Jesus continually is focused on, not about evangelism, not go tell people what I did. In fact, Jesus often says, please don't tell anybody what I did.
Please don't tell anybody, right.
But instead is saying, be these people, form them correctly, help them to understand in the way they live. My taking a personal day in big air quotes may be exactly what will help somebody come to the God who loves them and cherishes them.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's just it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Okay, there are two more. One, the already healed conversation, meaning you are already healed from this. Now you just have to accept that you've been healed.
Okay, so I had never heard this one before I started dabbling in your history.
Yeah.
So help me with this one, please.
Yeah, I don't know if I can. You know, it is a name it, claim it mentality.
Ooh, it's like The Secret. How new age.
Yeah, it's manifesting.
Yeah, Secret.
It's like yeah, The Secret, right? Yeah, it's manifesting. It's like I'm already healed, or I'm already rich, or I already have the car I want, or I already have the job I want, or I already have whatever. And it's like you have to accept it and believe it and embrace it and make it yours. And when it's something as internal as, you know, mental illness, they think you should be able to convince yourself that you've already been healed of this.
Okay. All right. So here's I realize that we're going to lose listeners by my saying this. There's a tiny bit of truth in that.
Okay.
It is not I'm already healed and I just have to accept it. Actually, there are two pieces of tiny truth, or tiny, you know what I mean?
Okay.
One is we can get very comfortable in our pain. And coming out of our pain means discomfort and not knowing what to expect. If I'm curled up in a corner, I know what to expect. If I'm not, I don't know what to expect. Sure. And it could change everything.
Yeah.
So there is something about that, accepting the possibility of a better life.
Yes.
That is absolutely real.
Right.
Okay. The other one is that we can feel hopeless without even naming it. I think this is where the whole manifest thing is useful. Because the stories we tell ourselves, in fact, shape the way we see the world.
That's true.
So while I completely understand if somebody's saying this to you when you're coming for solace and direction, it isn't helpful.
It's not.
And as you've done some healing, just a shred, when those moments come to say, I'm not the first person who's gone through this. Mm-hmm. I'm not the first person who survived it. There are resources, and I'm not alone in this. Mm-hmm. That's where you can actually gain some hope and help in it. So not, I'm already healed, but instead, if I look in the way over yonder, there's a me healed. How do I get there?
How do I get there? Right. And understanding that there's work to do.
There's work
to get there. But that's
right.
not what they're just saying.
Oh, I know.
Accept the idea that you've already been healed.
Yeah, accept the idea that I'm already a 6 foot tall blonde. Okay.
Great.
Cool. Yeah, that's okay. But you understand my point.
No, I totally understand your point. And I think you're right about that. I think that's one of the things that therapy can be really great about, because therapists can point out to you when you can't see it. You've already made such progress here, mm-hmm. here, and here.
Right.
Things have gotten so much better
right.
in how you're relating to this situation or that.
That's right.
And when you have someone walking with you through that, then that can be really helpful. If
right.
you don't have someone walking with you through that, and you have no one to remind you that healing is a process,
yes.
then all you hear is, why don't I feel better?
Right.
Why am I being disobedient by not feeling better? By not being done with this because I haven't accepted God's healing? You know, for people that are in that situation, that's pretty defeating. But getting out of that victimhood mindset, I absolutely agree with you, because we've both known people that are happy, but spinning in victimhood, even though it's been years, and
that's right,
and so many doors have opened, and
because
so many changes have happened.
It's familiar,
right? People would rather live in the hell they know sometimes,
right? For sure,
than accept something better that's hard to get to,
right?
Or at least that's the way they perceive it.
Yeah.
So I hear you, and I agree with all of that.
I want to lift up also, besides therapy, spiritual direction can be really helpful in this.
Absolutely, yes.
So spiritual direction, for those of our listeners who don't know what it is a way of companioning somebody in their faith life. It feels like it has some of the structure of therapy, but it's not about, uncovering your deepest pain necessarily. Right. It's about helping you refocus on, well, what's your relationship with God? What's your relationship with yourself? What's your relationship with God? What's your, just back and forth.
And it doesn't discount your relationship with yourself.
At all.
See, that's the thing. Shouldn't. That's what I'm hearing in these conversations, is that there's no regard given to our relationships with ourselves.
Yes.
It's all about, you need to be relating to God in this way.
That's
or
right.
You need to be relating to other people in this way.
That's right. Ooh. You know what it makes me think of? Is that language that we sometimes use in the church, and I've been guilty of this, of talking about the vertical and the horizontal, right? Like making that cross, which is...
Right.
But instead, it's much more like kind of this burst of light. Where you've got to be dealing... This is scary, but you've got to be dealing with all of it. Uh-huh. And also... a lot of it comes to your center with God already in you.
Yes, right.
The other thing that I heard, it seems to me the thread of all the conversation you're talking about are about whether we are being obedient.
It all points back to obedience.
There's a problem with that.
There definitely is a problem with that.
And that's the damaging father image that we've talked about before.
It is.
Okay.
It is. There's one more, and this is one that I can sort of speak to.
Okay, good.
The medication conversation. So I posted something that I thought was vulnerable but fairly benign on Instagram, I think last year.
Okay.
And I just said, I'm having a sad day. I feel sad today.
Right, I remember
Remember
that.
this?
Yeah.
And so I got alarm from my mom and my sister, which that's fine. But I got this long Facebook message from this cousin that I haven't talked to. In fact, she was a cousin by marriage, and she and my cousin have been divorced for decades.
Okay, so from this stranger.
Basically, she saw my post, and she sends me this long personal message.
Okay.
She shared with me, I had all these issues and I was on all these medications, and I just stopped taking them, and I feel so much better, and God is in all of this. God has healed me, and I'm just here to tell you that you don't need to go on medication. You don't need to talk to a therapist. God has this for you. Trust God with all of that. And I'm like, wow, first of all, so intrusive, and just like no respect for anything that I was feeling, and just felt the need to insert all of that. And of course, my response to her was like,
bless your heart.
Basically, thanks. But the idea that medication is okay in the short run, but you shouldn't use it as a crutch. Medication is something that could get you over a hump, and that's okay. God doesn't condemn you for that, but you shouldn't be on it long term. You should let it go. It goes back to the trust thing. If you're trusting God enough, if your faith in God is deep enough, you shouldn't need help.
So I could go on about this for hours. I admit that my first response is, you should have shared this with Miss Manners and had her respond. Because how incredibly poorly mannered is this?
Right.
I don't even know what to do with that kind of behavior. That right there is the crux of everything we're talking about. The idea that you automatically know what is best for me. And that someone who has not been in my life, has not seen my struggles, and who obviously doesn't actually have a clear control of the English language, is responding to me in a particular way. This is the kind of thing that makes Jesus followers and or Christians look bad.
Indeed.
Because your insecurity and or your miraculous healing are not necessarily what is going to happen for me, no matter what my faith is. If you look through the Bible, God does not deal with people like in a categorical way. So Elijah and Job, who were mentioned earlier, did not experience the same things. They did not go through the same things. Their relationship with God was different.
Right.
So even if she were absolutely right about the way it should go, that's bad Bible.
Yes, it is bad Bible. I agree with you completely. Completely.
And then from a more functional point of view, so I've been on medication since I finally realized that this was a depression problem, which I don't know how long it's been now, but it was probably my late 30s, early 40s. And I have weaned myself off of medication a couple of times, and frankly, I have not had the money to buy my medication because I didn't have health insurance and didn't have a job a couple of times.
Right.
In both cases, I was fine for a while. And then for me, I'm only speaking for myself, a wave of depression would hit me from out of nowhere. Like literally, I was not saying bad things to myself. There was nothing going on. I was praying to God. I was doing all the things I was supposed to do. And it was literally like a tidal wave came in and knocked me over.
Yeah.
When I'm on medication, that doesn't happen.
Right.
And it means that I can, in fact, pray. And I can, in fact, study. And I can, in fact, have decent relationships. And I can, in fact, all those things. So I don't recommend medication for everybody. And I think for some people, that short-term giving you some space between your thought and your response is incredibly helpful.
Yes. And
my body, her body, not the same.
Not the same.
My depression, her depression, not the same.
Yeah.
And thank God she felt healed from this. And maybe was healed from this.
Maybe.
But you know what? My relationship with God is my relationship with God. And if you think yours is the model for mine, we need to have a little chat.
Yes, right.
Because I would not take my version of the world and impinge it upon somebody I didn't know.
No, never. Never. Exactly. So those are the 6 conversations.
Yikes!
Wow. Yeah.
Friends, I'm so sorry you're going through this.
I know. It just doesn't really feel like the church is making headway here. Like it doesn't feel much better to me than where we've been.
Yeah, and I would say that the church is not monolithic.
No, it's not monolithic.
Like, we're awesome.
Well, we are. That's true. We are awesome.
Of course, we're not the church.
And we aren't in the majority here. I think that many congregations, many church leaders are struggling with how to deal with this.
And many church leaders understand, like the self-reflective ones, know that they are hurt and they're tired and they're depressed and they're anxious. And even before they became ministers, okay, the number of people I know who became ministers in order to solve their own emotional and spiritual problems. Right. Yeah. So this is just a reality of what it is to be human.
Yes. It's a reality of what it is to be human. And being Christian does not immunize us from being human. We're still 100% human. Listeners, we love hearing from you. If you have questions, if you want to share any part of your story, we would love to hear from you. Cocktailtheology.com is where we are. And we also love ideas for other episodes, questions that you would like us to answer if we can, or at least explore. We love to hear those too. So please do reach out. And if you are in a place where you feel like depression or anxiety are hindering you from living the life that you want to live, or are disrupting your relationships, or disrupting your daily routine, or making things difficult, there are many resources available. If you'll reach out to us, we would love to hear from you.
And the easy one is NAMI, N-A-M-I, and that's a great resource just all by itself.
Till next time, folks.
Bye.
Funny how the view can change, how life just seems to rearrange itself, no matter what it was. I don't know how it goes, but look, moving on feels pretty good. Moving on feels pretty good.
If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and hit subscribe wherever you're listening right now. We welcome your comments, questions, and ideas for conversations and for cocktails. Please get in touch with us at our website, cocktailtheology.com. Cocktail Theology is a production of SFS. Our theme song is Moving On Feels Pretty Good, recorded by yours truly, Benton Stokes. You can find my music wherever you stream your favorite artists. Join us next Thursday for another new episode.